Belinda suffers from insomnia as she prepares to become a mother soon. Belinda lectures on anthropology at the university but will soon have to leave her job to focus on raising her child. However, she hopes to return at the earliest opportunity. She is currently very nervous about the upcoming ultrasound and is coping only thanks to the support of her husband Norman, a public attorney. Some time ago the couple lost their son, and they fear it could happen again. However, the ultrasound doctor assured them that their daughter is perfectly fine. At that moment Belinda felt incredible relief. She should be happy, but she is worried about the brink of losing her job. The family's financial situation is extremely unstable. Suddenly Norman received a call from an unknown number. It was his stepmother Solange, a religious zealot. Norman hadn't spoken to his family in years, but now his father was dying, and Solange wanted Norman to visit him. Belinda was sure it was the right thing to do, but Norman was adamantly against having anything to do with his family. As a child, Solange wouldn't let him eat until he recited a prayer. Besides, Solange would clearly not approve of their interracial marriage, so Norman decided the discussion was over. Belinda continued to be plagued by nightmares. She started sleepwalking. The loss of their son Wallace still haunted her. Belinda couldn't manage to arrange a meeting with the dean to discuss her new schedule after the baby's birth. In a fit of anger she quit her job. At home, Belinda found her husband in distress. His father had passed away. The couple attended the funeral. Norman couldn't take his eyes off Solange, who sat in the front row with her back turned to them. Pastor Lewis delivered the eulogy. After the service, the couple greeted him personally. The pastor expressed his condolences and mentioned that Solange would like to see Norman. He was torn. On the one hand he wanted nothing to do with her, on the other, it seemed like the right thing to do. Solange could barely move on her own. Her face was hidden under a black veil. Belinda kindly helped the elderly woman, who somehow guessed that Belinda was expecting a girl. Solange was outraged that Norman didn't even show her tenderness, despite her raising him as her own son. It was clear he wanted to leave as quickly as possible. It was time to read the will. Solange intended to leave everything she had to Norman and his wife, on the condition that she would live with them until her demise. This was also Norman's father's final wish. Solange had already sold her house, by the way. The couple discussed this privately. Norman was vehemently opposed to Solange living with them, believing their home would turn into her church. Belinda reminded her husband of their financial struggles. They couldn't even afford the bare essentials. In the end Norman had to relent, and soon they moved Solange's belongings into their home. Solange immediately began imposing her rules on the couple, much to Norman's displeasure, while Belinda agreed with her on many points. Seeing a photo of Solange in her youth, Belinda was impressed by the woman's beauty. Of course, merciless time had taken its toll. Solange shared that she had dreamed of becoming a model or actress, but her ambitions unfortunately never came to fruition. Solange said that our body is the house in which the spirit resides, and she intended to do things wisely. The couple showed Solange the nursery. She noticed an old chair that had belonged to Norman's late mother. Solange announced she would buy new furniture for the house. At dinner, she insisted everyone pray. Norman declared that wasn't their tradition, but Belinda shut him down, saying there was nothing wrong with it. Solange didn't hide her dislike of the dish. Norman tried to stand up for his wife, but Belinda assured him it was fine. Upon learning that her future granddaughter would be named Fern, Solange remarked that it was a horse's name and that she would come up with something more suitable. Then Solange sought advice from the spirit, muttering something incomprehensible. After a few minutes, she declared that the baby should be named after her grandfather Lawrence, meaning Laurie. At night, Belinda couldn't sleep, hearing whispers coming from Solange's room, who was supposedly speaking to spirits and saying Wallace's name. But how could she have known? Belinda began having nightmares. Norman advised his wife not to fall for Solange's tricks. The next morning Belinda knocked on her mother-in-law's door, but no one answered. She entered and saw Solange lying on the floor. Belinda was very frightened, but it turned out the elderly woman was simply praying in that position. Solange invited Belinda to join her, but she refused. Suddenly Solange declared that the house needed a mother. Belinda didn't know how to respond. Later, she asked her husband what he thought about the name Laurie. This was exactly what Norman feared, that Solange would start influencing his wife. However, Norman was too busy to focus on this as he had a lot of work to do. Belinda noticed more and more oddities in Solange's behavior, like reading the Bible upside down. Solange admitted that she prayed to heal herself from her illness. She made Belinda promise not to tell Norman. Now every evening at dinner, the couple was forced to participate in prayer. Unlike his wife, Norman spent most of his day outside the house, so he had far less contact with Solange. Suddenly the elderly woman began coughing violently. At that moment Norman noticed a musty smell. Belinda broke her promise, revealing that Solange suffered from incontinence. Angry, The elderly woman stormed away from the table. At night, Belinda couldn't sleep, hearing footsteps in the house. In the morning, Belinda noticed a pendant with strange symbols. Suddenly, Solange's cries for help echoed through the house. Opening the room's door, Belinda was hit by a revolting smell. Belinda couldn't take care of Solange alone anymore, so she asked her husband for help. After all, it was his stepmother. Norman was late for a client meeting, but he had no choice but to stay. Solange, who had used the bed as a toilet, stubbornly refused to take a shower, and Norman had to carry her. Noticing Solange's smug smile, Belinda realized the elderly woman had done it on purpose. Belinda felt it was unfair that Norman left her alone with Solange. Norman explained that he couldn't always be home. First, he needed to earn money, and second, if he won his current case, he'd get a promotion. Belinda could no longer hide her irritation toward her religious mother-in-law. Living with Solange was a nightmare. The elderly woman spent all day praying in her room. At one point, Belinda felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. She was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. The image of Solange praying wouldn't leave her mind. Soon Norman brought his wife and their newborn daughter home from the hospital. Belinda noticed an unfamiliar car parked near their house. Inside, all the windows were covered. Moreover, Solange had invited her friends to welcome little Lori. These religious fanatics surrounded Belinda, spouting absurd things about religion. After a C-section, Belinda could barely move. Finally, gathering her strength, she drove these people away. Shortly after, Norman came in. It turned out he had allowed Solange to bring her friends in exchange for new furniture. Hearing this, Belinda was deeply outraged. Norman was sorry because he'd meant well. Belinda didn't like this antique furniture at all. Furthermore, Solange replaced all the figurines and put an urn with her husband's ashes on the shelf. Belinda refused to tolerate this in her home any longer. Even the kitchen wasn't spared as Solange rearranged everything to her liking. When Solange called herself the mother of the family, Belinda could no longer keep silent. She declared she didn't want to hear anything about religion anymore, admitting her husband had been right about Solange. Clearly, she was a crazy old woman and a racist to boot. When Solange began acting erratically and aggressively, Belinda snapped and shoved her to the floor, forbidding Norman to help her. Solange's behavior continued to grow more disgusting. Belinda could no longer share a house with this old woman who was willing to do anything to make her relatives' lives unbearable. Solange changed her mind about including her granddaughter and Belinda in the inheritance if the dismissive attitude toward her continues. She wants full respect. When Solange talked about her daughter Margaret, whom demons supposedly took, Belinda was horrified. There's no doubt that Solange is sick and poses a danger to them. Belinda is very worried about her little daughter, who is constantly crying. But as soon as Belinda held Solange's pendant over the crib, Lori calmed down. It seemed like madness. Norman also noticed the pattern. Belinda said that Solange had taken over their home. Norman tore up his stepmother's updated will. When Norman left for work, Solange continued tormenting Belinda, making her slowly lose her mind. Belinda called her husband and urgently asked him to come. She couldn't manage alone anymore. Seeing how Solange was holding Lori in her arms, Belinda told the elderly woman to stop doing that. Solange was behaving as if she wanted to replace Belinda as Lori's mother. Belinda couldn't bear to hear it. Suddenly, Solange smashed her own face to make it look like Belinda was trying to harm her. When Norman returned, he believed this and took Solange to the hospital. The relationship between the couple was becoming increasingly tense. Norman reminded his wife that it was her idea to let Solange live with them. But Belinda had no idea what she was agreeing to. When Belinda mentioned Norman's late sister Margaret, he said it was nonsense. Now, with Norman about to get a promotion, he hoped for his wife's help in taking care of Solange and Lori. They couldn't afford a nurse or nanny yet. Belinda was hurt that Norman believed Solange over her. While her husband was at work, Belinda had to take care of both their daughter and her mother-in-law. Belinda's life had become unbearable. One day the doorbell rang. It was Pastor Lewis, whom Solange had asked to come. The pastor was concerned about the tense situation in the family. Looking extremely tired, Belinda shared that Solange was causing havoc in the house. But the pastor insisted that Solange was a good woman, a role model for any decent Christian. Now Belinda deeply regretted allowing Solange to pay for their home. It had given her extra power over them. Now Solange had a whistle so she could call Belinda at any moment. She also never missed an opportunity to remind them that it was thanks to her that the family wasn't starving. When asked why she lied about her daughter, Solange laughed maniacally. Eventually Belinda had enough and took the whistle away from her. In the evening, the couple couldn't even have a peaceful dinner because Solange was screaming throughout the house. Despite his wife's objections, Norman helped his stepmother to another room. Belinda continued to be plagued by nightmares. She was afraid that Solange would take Norman away from her. One day Norman asked his wife why she had bitten their daughter. Belinda said that it wasn't her but Solange, who could actually move without her cane, just trying to make them believe otherwise. This time Norman believed his wife and accused Solange of trying to harm Lori. Solange denied it, claiming that Belinda hated her and was trying to turn them against each other. But Norman knew for sure that his stepmother was lying. She had been screaming all night, not letting them sleep, but no one went to her. The next morning, the couple discovered that Solange had passed away. The first thing Belinda did was remove all the religious paraphernalia from their home, feeling a sense of relief. However, paranoia still haunted Belinda, who kept hearing Solange's insane laughter everywhere. Soon the couple put the house up for sale, hoping to leave the past behind. Belinda was anxious about an upcoming job interview. By the way, she was pregnant again and expecting twins. Norman felt a little awkward about using Solange's money, but Belinda said the old woman got what she deserved. Belinda also told her husband to throw out Solange's favorite chair. Their new life was beginning. Belinda loved being a mom, but her true calling was teaching. No one knows that Solange didn't pass away of natural causes that night. It was Belinda who did it. And she has no regrets. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.